Buongiorno. Buongiorno, benvenuti a tutti. Ci scusiamo per questo.
Good morning, welcome everybody. We're sorry for this delay for organizational reasons. Bear with us. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. It's a great pleasure to speak about a theme that is dear to my heart, not just because we speak about language, and for a journalist, the use of words is continuous concern. Furthermore, inclusive language and language that doesn't just respect differences but enhances them and takes care of them. The concept of care is dear to my heart. Words reflect thought, but they also have an impact on thought. Non-inclusive language can lead to bias and stereotypes. That's why it is so important to speak about it. It's not just a question of form, but especially it's a question of substance. That's why I'd like to thank you for having me and for the choice of such an important theme. And nowadays it's not so taken for granted. I'd like to invite the promoters, the president of AMFAO and Mido Lorraine Berton. Good morning, President. Please take a seat. And Vice President Sabrina Paolon, Vice President with responsibility for training, labor, welfare and diversity inclusion. President, why is it so important that an association just like yours deals with such a theme? It's important because it's important to be able to speak first and foremost, and the way you express yourself makes a difference. It's so important in the world of eyewear, in my opinion, because there are so many women working inside our factories. So, oops, I said it again, it makes us reflect. Words often are used in an inconsistent way. We don't realize that a word that seems to us to be superficial or uttered with superficiality may leave a deep sign in the person receiving it, be it negative or positive. Negative words exceed the number of positive words. Language is often used with a superficial approach, and over the past year spent with Sabrina, I thought so much about my language. I do realize that I'm the first to make mistakes, and this path is of great importance, 360 degrees in our companies, but when you learn it, obviously you use it in the circles of family, of your family, collaborators, friends. It's very important. And the key word is awareness. Sometimes we have cultural, environmental habits without realizing it. This path is a path of awareness. And at this point, Sabrina, a commitment expressed by the association with a specific proxy. Yes. For the Vice President. And what did you do? And why this choice on language? And how are you involving companies? Thank you so much, Maria Luisa. First of all, good morning, everybody. And welcome. Thank you for being here. Why have we dealt with language? Because in a world, in a global, interconnected world, just like today's, diversity and inclusion for us are not just ethical values, but they are also strategic levers inside organizations. A specific proxy for diversity and inclusion inside the wider proxy of labor and welfare allows to promote and stimulate a working environment that is respectful and inviting. Every employee and everybody in the company can express their own potential and be accepted. Acceptance for us is key word. Investing in inclusive policies doesn't just foster innovation and creativity inside our companies, but it also contributes to generating sound corporate culture, and especially a culture that can attract and retain talents inside the company. And a big problem for us, we live in a territory where search for labor force is limited. After having dealt up until last year with female leadership and gender equality, this year we wanted to go beyond raising the awareness of companies and especially helping companies focus on the use of words and their power, the power to host or to break, to include or exclude, also through stereotypes you mentioned before. We started with a simple questionnaire that we sent out to companies to understand if some terms were used and especially were known by people. And then we organized the workshops, special workshops. They are experience-based workshops because when you recognize a specific moment and you are aware, you use a word which is no good. So through such workshops, we then saw how sometimes language is used without realizing it, and also in our daily life. And shortly, we will see the result of the workshops. Thanks to Monia Dardi. Thank you so much, Sabrina. Thank you so much. Sabrina used a word which is fundamental, strategic. I always say that in the case of brands, dealing with and communicating diversity is a competitive factor for the market. It becomes a competitive factor, a strategic factor for the market. It is not ancillary. It makes a difference for a brand on the market. So let's start to focus on the problem. At this point, I'd like to invite Monia Dardi from Milia. It's a consultancy training company that accompanied Anfao in this path, and she will tell us she will tell us what the starting point and arrival point have been in this path. Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Also, on my behalf, special thanks to all the work team, to the Anfao team. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Marcolin's team and Milia team. It was so many of us working, and I'd like to thank all the companies that worked with us in our labs and workshops. Let's start by saying what we did. That's the roadmap. It has already been defined by Sabrina. We wanted to start to understand and map inclusive language and on what we can work in Belluno. Many companies wanted to be involved to understand inclusive, non-inclusive behaviors, bridge words, killer words. First question that we asked was aimed at understanding why wide and inclusive language is important and why wide and inclusive. Ludwig Wittgenstein is the father of language, and he says something wonderful. The boundaries of our language represent the boundaries of our world. And something came to my mind in Germany. In Germany, you have a wonderful word, Weltanschauung, the vision of the world. What does it mean? It means that basically what we say and think is also the contrary. This continuous interaction. Language is dynamic. We have a responsibility with the words we use every day. And then Michela Murgia says something very important, the power of words. Words are political power, and we inhabit words. And wide and inclusive language, they already spoke about it in 1996, Alma Sabatini, inside the ministry. And she was a feminist activist. She was speaking about a sexist use of political language, but also in journalism. She was the first, 1986. And then we speak about wide language, not just inclusive language. Inclusive means binary. When we speak about wide language, it means we include every type of diversity. More than including, we speak about coexistence of differences. According to Vera Geno, but also Fabrizio Canfra, there is not a majority group that should include a minority group, but we should coexist in differences and enhancement of differences. And you don't have a hierarchy between normal and different, also because normal is mathematical language. It was introduced the first time in the 19th century, perpendicular Gaussian curve, most common features of people, but it's statistical language that was applied to something social. And language is an act of identity. I define and I recognize. And why is it important? Which are the benefits of the use of a wide and inclusive language? Let's say it immediately inside an organization. Apart from enhancing differences, there's a question of recognition. If I recognize people, I co-build sense with people in an organization. For sure, I have well-being apart from the image, just like Sabrina said before. Talents of people, and legal and ethical conformity. Outing is usually penalized. It is recognized as discrimination. So the survey, we started with a small survey. Where do we start? It's very interesting because words that were not known were intersectionality, for example, ageism, ableism, discriminations, while instead they knew something more about gender identity, wide inclusive language, a bit less recognition in a non-binary context. Results, we mapped in a very simple way bridge words, just like Rosenberg says. Words can be bridges, windows, or walls. We mapped killer words and inclusive, non-inclusive behaviors. Bridge words. Bridge words are words of kindness, words of collaboration, and words of gratitude, but also, and this was the most extraordinary things. High average sensitivity, as it is described in the literature, a minimum level of empathy inside organizations that leads us to say, how are you? Are you well? I've seen you. I've recognized you. And then the concept of going from calling you by your first name to us, from first name to us. Killer words that discriminate, and observations on disability, insults, for example, and prejudice on age. Think about in ageism. I'm too old, I'm too young. It's internalized, and gender bias, but also for example, if I had a successful career, there should be a reason. Ethnical stereotypes, being part of that ethnical group means having dominant culture or being all alike and not thinking that my reality is not absolute reality. It's a pair of glasses. And which is inclusive? What is inclusive behavior? It's a behavior that opens and people that worked in our labs told us that they want a constructive dialogue to express themselves, to have more opportunities to promote equity. And then you have a wonderful word, respect. Respect. The word respect is a word that has two meanings. Looking back, but also being open to something new. It's just like the word divertere or the word diversity. It means looking toward another side, but being open to somebody else, having fun. Which trajectory have we extrapolated from such labs? We have takeaway messages, the possibility through the manifesto to start giving small suggestions. Then obviously everything should be put into the context of an organization. For example, starting to think about the type of language I want to have inside an organization. Do I want a binary language? If we speak with LGBTQ plus associations, they say it's the minimum. Okay. Or we can start translating my internal, external language with epicene collective language that can already include the word person, for example, is a wonderful word. Persona in Italian. It includes both genders, and this is the lines of inclusive language in a company. There isn't an adequate language for everybody, but language must be rethought and give sense. If we think about the concept of longevity inside a company, the co-construction of sense and why I am inside an organization and what I'm doing, and also recognition of people. So we also use certain formulas that can be wider, and we open our mind. Where do we start from? We start from a revolution and change in inclusive language. We start from leadership. Leadership cannot be defined as binary because otherwise we cannot use the term wide, inclusive. There's no biologically determined leadership, female, male leadership, or people that are more predisposed to doing something. But we can see and analyze competencies for real leadership. A metaphor is always used. The metaphor of the giraffe. It should have a long neck. It should see so many points of view, not just its own, but it should also have a big heart. It's the point connected to empathy. And then the president told us at the beginning that we should be aware, we should work on us first, to understand prejudice, bias, stereotypes, to work in a targeted fashion inside organizations. And we end. I was super quick. True? Yes. I'd like to end with two suggestions that we like a lot. If being a good leader means creating change inside yourself and being able to propose it. And I'd like to remind you of the power of a letter of a daughter who wrote to Lego, and she said, let's stop it. Representations of female Lego miniatures. They go shopping, they sunbathe, and instead boys swim with sharks. And the idea is to change and also change the world. And hence all the figures of Lego STEM, but they had to be bold. And then you have this wonderful sentence by a philosopher, Castoriadis, and he said, inhabiting boundaries involves a process of decolonization of the mind. In a moment just like this, where you have strong single thought, strong colonialism, it's fundamental to work on yourself, to be open to something different, but to diversity as a value. And inhabiting boundaries also means giving the word to those not included in the majority group, to those that can see with different eyes a world that perhaps is not so perfect. And to give you an example, redefinition of cities starting from the point of view of somebody with disability that cannot have access, cannot participate because you have obstacles and perhaps architectural barriers, but also language barriers, relational barriers, and if we attach labels to people, we'll end up having a single pair of glasses and be blind. That's in a nutshell the path taken together, and we hope we can enrich it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Monia, for this path. And for ANFAO, it was translated into a real manifesto of inclusive language. We'll have the possibility to discover it later on. And it's a teaser meeting, a dialogue, a path that can go on in other occasions. It's a path that is enriched from time to time. At this point, it's a great pleasure for me to leave the floor to Paolo Ruffini. We don't need big presentations. Author, director, thank you so much. Good morning, good morning. Thank you for having me. And I already have a difficulty. I'm so unfair, and I will disappoint you. I will try and tell you something interesting. However, I'd like to express my point of view. My point of view, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a psychologist. Who are you? What's your job? You might ask. It's complex. When they ask me what my job is, it's complex. My job is difficult job, especially because it uses so many languages, because when you have to do with cinema, television, but especially languages that change. Last day they told me you should have makeup because you should go to the radio, because now you can see people working from a radio. You no longer have reference points. Have you seen the podcast? The podcast is an instrument that was created to be listened to. And before I gave an interview with a photographic machine that shoot better than video cameras. Everything is based on a misconception. Today's communication has changed. Apart from my background, humanistic background, I do a job that should thrive inside such communications media. I already tell you that I don't speak here as a mental coach, an expert in nothing. I'd like to speak about my experience. A hyperactive man that tries make people not think about their own problems for a couple of hours or for some minutes. It depends on the medium where you enjoy what I do. And so then there are other role games we can have. First role game, and bear with me if I stay here, but by convention you speak from a stage. If I go down, I take a different responsibility. It's more civil. Bear with me when I stay here, and by playing my role, sometimes I can have bigger rights when I go down. This is the floor, this is the stage, and by itself it's a considerable distinction. And just like Monia said, if a word ends up on the floor, there's a responsibility. If it ends up on a floor, it's an artistic responsibility. It's different. I say it because if you do my job, you are extremely concerned and sometimes are frightened at the use of words. But it's obvious that when you are on a stage, it's different than when you are on the floor. On the stage, I can represent, and I also do it at the theater, I can represent a serial killer, I can represent mass murderers, I can represent a misogynist person, and even if I do not hate men and women, if I should interpret Jack the Ripper, I shouldn't justify myself. And after such assumptions, I'd like to speak about my experience. Are you following me? Yes. Observations. Let's have a dialogue. On Sunday morning, who has hangover? It's Sunday morning. Okay. Something happens. 10 years ago, 11 years ago, they told me something special. They told me social media, you should work in social media, and I thought I would go to social media, but I understood social. And there was a dear friend who does a theatrical workshop in Livorno, and he's been doing so for 30 years.
Friencius.
This friend of mine teaches history and philosophy. He does believe in social marginality. He loves the idea that theater can be therapeutical to some, so he starts his lab. And he invites virtually everyone to his lab. What does everyone mean? So people, disadvantaged people coming to the theater. But he thought that every one of us has a body and can play as an actor. There are no differences, But let's go back to being an actor. It means that we all have a communication potential and we can play the role of being someone else. So the audience, we don't know why there are so many people in the audience who genetically are different. They have an additional chromosome. Down discovered this syndrome, and so we now know what the Down syndrome is. These people are extraordinary. Of course, they have a very complex and difficult life. I do not have children, and I cannot imagine what it means for a parent to have a child suffering from this genetic anomaly or disability. So within, if we consider that they have plenty of difficulties, we also know that they have advantages. They can tell lies very well. They are very confident in hugging people. They know what happiness is. And the Down syndrome have more ups than downs. I don't know if you have seen the melancholy or the sadness of people who come inside the trade show. So people are not happy. They look like this. If you joke, you are not normal. If you say hello to someone you do not know, you are considered a lunatic. So if you are generous, you must be generous with someone you know. If someone is generous with you and you don't know him or her, you ask, but where is the trick? So this is an anomalous situation. In this world, it is much better to have a perimeter all around us. This is our ability. We are disabled in terms of generosity, wonder, of recognizing the importance of a smile, of humanity. We can hardly recognize the opportunity of being generous to anyone. Let's go back to people suffering from the Down syndrome. These people, When I go to the theater, I say, there are 10 people in the audience, 3,000 people in the audience, okay. And the enthusiasm is basically the same. It is not important if you're wealthy. It is not important the role you play. What is important is to be there. I have a performance in Rome today, and I asked Sabrina to talk earlier because I have to take a train, and at 6 p.m. I will be playing in the Brancaccio Theatre, and thank you for this favor. So during the first half of the program, we hug each other, and then there is a debate before the performance. Where are we going to have dinner? And so we think ahead, before starting our performance. To me, it is much more interesting to work with people suffering from the Down syndrome than with people who have our same chromosomes. It is more stimulating to work with people suffering from the Down syndrome. I'm not a philanthropist, I'm not a hero, I'm self-centered. I do not think about the others, I think about myself. So I think that people like us are very trivial, are very boresome when I'm dependent from people with the Down syndrome because they give me so much love, and it is the kind of love we look for since we are born. So they give me something without having anything in return. I'm not able to have humanistic talks or very high level talks. I'm self-centered. Trust me, I'm selfish. So this is not a therapy, I'm talking about. When I do something for someone I do not know, is absolutely wonderful. When I do something for someone who has disadvantages as compared to myself, well, I don't know if these people are disadvantaged or have more advantages than I do. I'm not telling that the people with the Down syndrome have another way of seeing life. They are not like me. They are unique exactly as I am. Uniqueness is something we have in common. I'm different from you. You are different from him or her. We are all different. 6 billion people, 6 different individuals. What does it mean? It means that the search we are doing is not a social search, but in the social platform, we are all standardized. We all look the same. So nature never asks us to be the same. Have you ever seen a sunset twice, or a flower twice, or an apple that is exactly the same as the other, or a tree that is the same of the other? Well, nature is smarter than we are. It doesn't have a filter, to change things. Nature, in its faults, has many advantages. And so, on this floor, we are much on the pavement. On this floor, we are much more boresome. On the stage, we are much more interesting. If I highlight the diversity becomes a chance for all of us. I was just quoting an example. So, if you come on stage and I put a spotlight on you and you have an anomaly, then this anomaly can be an advantage. This is very cool. The theater is much smarter than our real life. So the stage doesn't want us to be normal. The stage wants us to be different. Yes, I take advantage of diversity in Romeo and Juliet. I will take advantage of the beauty of these two people, of these two young lovers. So exploitation is inside the theater. This is the marvel. So I work in the theater on two issues. One is happiness, trusting in happiness, and the second issue is God. God in parentheses. So we wonder a lot about the meaning of words. So God is Logos, is the Word. During the Holy Mass, you hear the Word of God, which is the number one thing. And then we give meaning to a word. It is up to us to give a meaning to a word. So a word is something that comes out from my mouth. But it is interesting to understand whether we are the Word of God, and if this applies also to people who are different than us or have other characteristics. The performance title is Ding Dong Down, and it's a religious performance, so to speak. So, if I have a trailer here with me, and up and down. No, just for a second, because it would be interesting to listen to the audio. Yes, I want to show you a part of a movie that you will find also on Rai Play. It is a movie about a journey. Please pay attention to Federico Parlanti, one of the characters. The first character you see since January has been the first radio speaker in Italy. We are broadcast on Radio 24, the first dubbing person, and he works as an actor. Federico is absolutely excellent and skilled. When we talk about inclusion, and I do respect enterprises like Biz Out, for instance. Biz Out is a wonderful enterprise, and his founder is a visionary because he has trained people with autism to work as waiters in a pizzeria. So when, of course, you collect orders from the customs, it can be very confusing, but these people are absolutely excellent. They are extraordinary. But inclusion will happen when you go to a 5-star hotel. You will see a man, a woman, Chinese people with the Down syndrome or disabilities, and you will be aware that the star given to the restaurant was not due to the fact that they can explain the dish, but that they can serve the customer with a smile. So please pay attention to what my colleague says when in front of the camera I start shooting the backstage activities, and he does not understand why I'm recording him, because he says, I have nothing special. Why are you recording what I'm doing? And many people tell me that I work with special people, and I say, no, they are not special people, they are not special boys. They are boys. They are children, and some of them are in their are mid-aged, and they are absolutely normal. They are very nice, very funny. Some of them are not. They are very gentle. Some of them are not gentle, are rude sometimes. our performance is very trivial, so to speak, because what we have, what is important is that we are free to make mistakes, to be ourselves, to pardon ourselves for what we are, especially if you have an additional chromosome. This is the trailer of Up and Down, a normal movie.
Si sente anche, sono lo doppio io, però forse è meglio. Ah, vabbè, lo riniziamo e si...
No, no audio. Well, so I take a more minute. Well, that the trailer is good, as you have seen. So, what is strictly connected to an experience I made and I continue making. So, I decided to commit to understanding how important it is to work with kids, special kids. And I said, well, they are in their 50s. Yes, they are in their 50s. How is it possible that they are 50s? There is an anomaly because many people with the Down syndrome have heart problems. In 1961, the average lifespan for a Down syndrome person was approximately 40 years. Well, if I go to an asylum and I am forced to live there, of course, I won't live after my 30 years. One of the worst pages of our country was the psychiatric treatment on people before the Basaglia law. So there were in these asylums because they created problems to their families. And I'm talking to disabled people in general. I realized something. Most of the people with disabilities don't do things because they are not asked to. And in the trailer you will see that the bold person, Lamberto Giannini, that is the creator of the theater company. Most of the disabled people are not resources because they are not asked to be resources. They're not stimulated to be so. So they have, they are very strong and they're also fragile. Fragility and disability, when combined, increase disability. But if disability provides opportunities like in theater, then disability becomes an ability, a different chance. For instance, I cannot play tennis, I don't understand anything about soccer, I have no abilities in that. So we have to shift focus and understand that another person, another human being next to us is unique, is different from us. And my experience, and I have to overcome a prejudice because people generally ask me, are you related with a disabled people? A member of your family is disabled? No. I'm only get bored. So experiences told by people with disabilities are much more interesting than histories of Chiara Ferragni and Fedez, for instance.
È un film normale.
Normale?
Sì.
Non niente di particolare.
No.
You consider yourself a normal, you consider this movie a normal people. Oh, my love. A theater group, a journey to normality. Are you normal? Are you kidding? Life. We get married. 2 kids are getting married. 2 kids with the Down syndrome. Politics. Che Guevara. Kindness. Sooner or later, I will find a fiancé who loves a gentleman. Disability. I have a vision of disability that is not cynical. Sometimes most of these people do not do things because they are not asked to. Success. So this competition is first and last. Beauty. You do not know what it means to be normal. Happiness. When I was pregnant, a friend of mine had a kid with no hands, so I was scared myself. So I walked to a sanctuary and I asked for a happy child. And I have a happy child. Life is wonderful. Friendship. Love. A very sweet child, a perfect child. Have you ever, were you ever asked to get married? Yes. The actors of this movie, how are they? Normal? I love you, Paolo, forever. I will love you forever. Thank you so much. So.
So that's what I tried to tell you as an idea. And going back to children, somebody congratulated, and you seem like a babysitter, and somebody told me something wonderful. Before going to bed, I relax as a babysitter and as a carer. I interview children and old people. Children, I am curious about this thing, wisdom of children, they say, and the wisdom of the elderly. I don't know why they don't speak about wisdom of people, 40-year-old people. It's just as if in the middle of our path there's an interregnum where perhaps we forget where we come from and where we are headed to. It's so fascinating, memory, and we don't remember so well when you were a child. It's such a pity to forget about the world of children who are not polluted by so many negative elements. If you believe in God as soon as you're born, well, you will recognize God when you die again. And there's something exciting having to do with children. It's a wonderful link with people with disabilities. If I take a 3-year-old child by hand and I don't know him, he comes with me. If I take by hand somebody with disability on a wheelchair, this person comes with me. It's normal that we educate a child saying don't trust. And however, be careful. The right world is the world of that child, not ours. Why shouldn't that child trust? And whatever we say comes from a completely different mindset that is against every sense for which we are born. When we define the intellectual quotient of children, well, why don't we ask children what they would do if they saw somebody hungry and if they hold a sandwich in their hands? What would they do if they see somebody trapped somewhere? Last year, 85,000 people died, and they could have been saved, but there were people shooting them with their cell phones, accidents, elevators, different difficult situations, and people shoot people in difficulty instead of helping them. It would be better to educate people helping others. Intelligence is important, but I work with so many people that have cognitive deterioration, and intelligence is overrated, and man has invented artificial intelligence. Man will never invent artificial sensitivity. Intelligence is limited. People waging wars are very smart. Intelligence creates misunderstandings. Culture is something else. We have a problem. We have 18,000 Italians who are functional illiterate. It's something inborn in the country. It's complex. Some people are winning elections, and there's an expert saying that our future will be decided by people knowing nothing and not knowing something. Two psychologists, Dunning-Kruger, they carried out a study. They say if today Einstein, the theory of relativity, if it were posted on Instagram, they would reply, "You are an idiot. It's not possible." Social. If Aristotle came back to life, would be amazed. And cultural disability, it's a theme that should prevail, and kids have to be unfair. The value of disobedience is equal to a mistake. If I don't make mistakes, I do not learn. Mistakes teaches so much, pain teaches so much, but when I'm with children, I wonder, why don't we realize that children have something that we don't have? Faith. Children believe in the unicorn and Santa Claus. They're so good at believing, and that's it. At a certain point, there was a father that told his child, the grandpa died, and I asked him, "Where's your grandpa in the sky?" And he looks up. There's a wonderful video of children looking at the sky to find their grandpas. Cielo means in Italian hiding the gods. God. Cielo means hiding. It's a veil hiding what is behind, and children can look beyond. And this child told me, "I'm connected to my grandpa through a thread, and he helps me in maps, for example, get into my heart." And at a certain point, when I told him, well, when I am a babysitter, I speak with children just as if they were adults, and also the opposite. That's how it is. I speak about Hegel philosophy with children, and at a certain point, I tell this child, "So, Grandpa died," and he said, "No, he's in the sky." And I listen, and it tells me, for example, that if he keeps on loving him, it means he's not dead. And I try and dig inside the concept. If I tell you that you are a social, it means you are not social. The A before the word, it's privative, alpha in Greek. It denies the following word in Latin that is mors, and amors is non-death, and the opposite of death is not life, is love. when we are children, we know it. And we keep on loving certain people even if they're not alive. And we keep on loving people who are not alive. Amors is winning over death. And love. It's the only sense when we come to the world and you breathe, you love, and no one of you can decide now not to love somebody, nobody. And you don't have any human being that has this disability. We are all able to love, each one of us. And sometimes when I go to pediatric hospitals, I see children that have difficulties, that are not born well, and they receive harsh treatments. And you don't have an ugly child. They're so good looking. Our ability to love when you are children is something you will not find in life. It's unconditional love. It's real love. It's not just when I'm with you, I love you, but don't betray me, don't cheat on me, don't be late, don't do this, don't do that. No. And a child doesn't ask his father and mother anything in exchange. And if we are ill, your parents care about you. And when you speak to children about problems, it's incredible. I see a girl that had 2 broken dolls. She was playing with such dolls, and for a 6-year-old daughter, having 2 broken dolls, it's something serious. She was grateful. She was playing with the head. How can you be so happy and play with the head? Your dolls are broken. And she replied, I cried, but she was playing with such broken dolls. And I asked her, are you happy? And she replied, yes. And how come? And she told me something that struck me, and no mindfulness expert could really say it. Do you want to know how I can be happy with such severe problems? It's simple. I'm happy without solving such problems. And I say, I do not understand. How come? How can you do it? And she replied, when you become small, you will understand. How wonderful.
Che meraviglia, è una roba.
How wonderful. It's incredible, right? And the sense of children living the present, there's a Taoist concept. It's so difficult. The action of doing nothing. Children do nothing. In the morning they wake up, they go to school, they play, and the day after they are reborn again. The action of doing nothing. If you read something about spirituality, Sai Baba, and so on and so forth, so many authors, it is point, any spiritual master, when you have a disciple and they ask him, and also Jesus, what should I do to solve the problem? A disciple asks, nothing. You should do nothing. Action of doing nothing. Life always finds a way. And it's an extraordinary form of revival, because children live the present. The present is the concept. Here and now, such wonderful mindfulness concepts. This moment, which is always gone, and the past has always happened. The present is something that we forget about thanking for having it, even if it's called present. And there's something, and I conclude, that connects life from birth, being children, to the end. And then I will conclude with a video. And another research I carried out, it's a research on a condition, debilitating condition, and perhaps it's the most complex form at an inclusive level. And now there's a awareness raising campaign, inclusivity at work. There's an even more complex inclusivity, which is not dictated by a committee that allows workers to have some sort of awareness about it. It's the family. In Italy, we have 1 million people with Alzheimer's disease, and Alzheimer's disease is a family disease which doesn't affect those who have it, but especially those who don't have it. People with Alzheimer's disease have a form of suspension. They do not suffer so much, and it's 10 million people, 20 million people in this country that have difficulties with the disease, which is hardly mentioned. Did you have something with Alzheimer's disease at home? No, I know nobody with Alzheimer's disease. I wonder why you have such words as Alzheimer's disease, and you immediately see people with open eyes when you mention them. You shouldn't have a ranking of tragedies, diseases, but something caught my attention. You have a neurological disorder that for so many years it was in the domain of psychiatry. It's a cultural problem in the country, and the problem of culture in the country is the Ministry of Culture is wrong. Culture, at least 50%, should be in the Ministry of Health, because a country without culture is a problem of a country that has mental problems, and Alzheimer's disease is a disease that culturally is difficult to tackle. It's a difficult disease at an inclusive level. I get angry if I see my mother that doesn't recognize me, and when I see my father or mother who at the end of their lives seem to be on Mars. I studied this disease, historical period just like COVID, and we couldn't stay closer to people, and people, millions of families that had cases of physical psychiatric handicaps were ignored. It was difficult to manage such cases. I carried out a survey on Shakespearean disease. It's a ferociously wonderful disease. I don't know who you are, but I love you. And what's the tricky point in the Alzheimer's disease? You do not recover from Alzheimer's disease, but you can recover with love. And the organs are jeopardized by a mechanism of the brain, and love is not inside here. Those awakenings, there are people who, on the day before dying, they can have love with their own husband and wife. How come? I don't know.
Una bellissima canzone del maestro Battiato.
There's a song by Battiato that shifts the point of view. I'm not interested in healing, but I'm interested in the cure. If I cannot be cured, I am interested in the treatment, and being treated with love is almost just like healing. And this is a trailer, and with this I'm through, and then I will thank you of a movie called Perdutamente, and it's present in Rai Play. You can play it.
Quando ho iniziato questo viaggio sapevo poche cose sull'Alzheimer. Sapevo che è una malattia crudele, misteriosa e legata alla perdita della memoria. E l'unico modo che conoscevo per fare in modo che la memoria non svanisse è il cinema.
Cosa vuol dire accudire un malato di Alzheimer?
I suffer from Alzheimer. It is terrible to see your wife that she does not recognize you anymore. And what about you? Does your wife recognize you? I always thought that the Alzheimer, someone suffering from Alzheimer did not know where keys were. No, they do not know what keys are used for. So feelings remain. My journey is very hard. I want to see the difference between treating people and healing people. So people suffering from Alzheimer is like They only have one note. They understood that the main thing in life is to love, an endless love. Will you remember me? Yes, I will. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. I know that the best way to apply inclusion is to love people. I wrote a book recently about love and wonder. So we need to love each other. Hopefully I gave you some food for thought. I show you 2 short videos. I wish you a wonderful Sunday, and I was very happy to be here with you, and hopefully it was wonderful for you too. Have a nice Sunday.